Ethan Cole never considered himself fearless. He was simply a photographer who drew inspiration from death. He found art in places people refused to look at: abandoned buildings, condemned hospitals, houses gutted by fire, and this time, Black Hollow Cemetery. Black Hollow lay on the outskirts of town, a graveyard dating back to the 1800s. Most people wouldn't step inside even in broad daylight. Ethan deliberately chose midnight because the name of his project was After Midnight Still Breathes. 0017 a.m. Ethan pressed the tripod firmly into the damp soil. The air was thick with moisture. Fog clung low to the earth. The cemetery gates were locked, but Ethan had obtained official permission. On paper, he was alone. He took the first shot beside an old angel statue. On the camera display, everything looked ordinary. Second shot. Third shot. On the fourth, he felt it. On the screen, behind a distant grave, a faint silhouette stood, human-shaped, motionless. Ethan spun around. No one. He looked back at the display. The silhouette was gone. Light leak, he muttered, or a long exposure artifact, but his heartbeat had already begun to race. Back home, Ethan uploaded the images to his large monitor. That was when everything changed. In the first photograph, a man stood beside the statue, clear, distinct, dressed in black. His face blurred, but his eyes locked directly onto the camera. In the second, another figure, a woman this time, standing on top of a grave. In the third, 3 people. In the fourth, 6. Ethan leaned back slowly. He had been alone. In every frame, new figures appeared, each time closer to the lens. Then he noticed something chilling. Their clothing wasn't modern. Some dressed in 1920s fashion, others far older. He decided to investigate the Black Hollow archives. The next day, he visited the town's small library. The archivist, Margaret, showed him old burial records. Ethan remembered the man from the first image. Black suit, sharp jawline. He showed the photo to Margaret. The color drained from her face. "That's Thomas Whitaker," she whispered, "buried in 1891. Silence fell heavy between them. The woman from the second photograph was identified too, 1934. The man from the third, 1972. All of them were buried in Black Hollow. All of them were dead. Ethan returned to the cemetery that night. This time, he felt it. He was not alone. The camera began another long exposure. 1 frame. 2 frames. On the third, he saw them clearly. The silhouettes no longer hid. There were dozens, standing between the graves, still, silent, all facing him. Ethan stepped back slowly. His foot struck something. He looked down. Freshly turned soil. A new grave. He knelt. No headstone yet, just a wooden marker. A name carved into it. Ethan Cole, 1889, 2026. His blood froze. "That's impossible!" The camera suddenly snapped on its own, a flash of white light. Ethan lifted his head. The figures were closer now, very close. Their eyes gleamed white in the darkness, and they began to move. The next morning, police found Ethan Cole's car outside the cemetery gates. Inside his camera was one final image: the cemetery. At the center, a new grave. Standing upon it was Ethan, head bowed, eyes closed, as if he had already been buried. Behind him stood dozens of shadows, and in the lower corner of the frame, faint words appeared. They hadn't been there before. Now they were. After Midnight Still Breathes. And beneath it, in smaller letters, now you do too. The photographs spread throughout the town, then online, then national news. The missing photographer's final image, the Black Hollow mystery. Did the dead take him? Within a week, Ethan Cole became legend. But Ethan was alive. He sat in a cheap motel room 200 kilometers away, watching the news. Beard grown out, dark circles under his eyes, phone switched off. It had all been a plan. He had dug the grave himself, carved the wooden marker, written his own name, then used Photoshop to blend archived photographs of the dead into his image. He understood one truth: mystery sells, death sells, disappearance is gold. In a month, he would miraculously return. Documentaries, interviews, galleries, a book deal. Ethan had reinvented himself. But something went wrong. The first time he saw it, in the motel window, a man in black standing behind him. He spun around. No one. Sleep deprivation, he told himself. The second time, in the black reflection of the television screen, 3 silhouettes, just like in the photographs, still, watching. He rechecked the Black Hollow archives. Thomas Whitaker, Eliza Moore, Harold Green. They were real, truly dead, and he had used their faces for art. That night, he dreamed. He stood in Black Hollow Cemetery. The graves were open. The bodies did not rise. They lay beneath the soil, eyes wide open, and in one collective whisper, "You brought us back." He woke up gasping. His hands were smeared of dirt, but he hadn't gone outside. His fame intensified. Police continued searching. The internet crowned him myth. A famous true crime podcast dedicated an entire episode to him. Curious crowds began visiting Black Hollow, trying to recreate the scene. Then it happened. A blog posted a new photograph, taken from outside his motel room window. Inside, Ethan sat alone. Behind him stood the dead. Caption: "He hasn't returned." Ethan felt his blood turn to ice. He hadn't taken that photo. He understood then. If his art had summoned them, only he could end it. Each night the shadows crept closer, first by the door, then by the foot of the bed, then directly in front of him. Their faces were no longer blurred, their eyes deep, wet, packed with soil. No matter where he went, shop windows, phone screens, even the darkness behind closed eyelids, they were there. Fame had become a curse. A month later, Ethan returned to town. Nighttime. He stood once more before the gates of Black Hollow Cemetery. No camera this time, no tripod, only a shovel. He went to the grave he had dug. The soil was still loose. He began to dig. Footsteps gathered behind him. Many, too many. He didn't stop. "I started this. I'll finish it." The grave deepened. He climbed inside, threw the shovel out. The shadows formed a silent circle around him. This time, they were not silent with fear. They were waiting. Ethan looked up at the sky. Art demands sacrifice. He pulled a knife from his coat, pressed it to his throat. The last thing he saw, the dead smiling. The next morning, the cemetery groundskeeper found a freshly dug grave. Inside lay Ethan Cole, peaceful expression, as though he had agreed to be photographed. 1 week later, another image surfaced on mine. The cemetery, the grave at the center, dozens of the dead standing behind it, and among them, Ethan. This time, his head was lifted, his eyes wide open, staring directly into the camera.